it's not really how your copy sounds. You haven't got any reason to be chosen over any of these other agencies. That's why you can't get the copy signed off, or nobody likes the copy. Not because it doesn't sound cool, it just doesn't say anything.
The Business Owner's Journey. I'm Nick Berry, and I've got real business owners telling their real stories, sharing their real lessons and strategies, so you don't have to figure it all out on your own. Roland Gurney owns Treacle, a marketing agency for other marketing agencies in London. And he has my absolute favorite perspective on positioning, differentiation, and messaging. They figure out what makes each agency different and valuable, and then write the precise words that will win clients. You can find his information at treacle.agency. And in our episode, we talk about the article that he wrote that first got my attention, which you should read. I think that makes my point that this dude is different. He does things differently. We also talked about the canvas that they use, their agency, their process for how they create different, and his book. All of these things are available for download for free in the show notes, or you can get them on nickberry.info or treacle.agency. He is also delivering a masterclass on Thursday morning, June the 26th. It's like $50 and you can join virtually. You can get that link in the show notes too. He didn't ask me to promote this. I went to him about it because I feel like more people need to hear the way that he talks about these things. After you listen to him talk, I think like a lot of you guys are going to be interested in the masterclass. My people are going to go. I'm excited to see a masterclass that's actually being delivered by a master. So I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments.
Sharpens you up, doesn't it, doing a workshop? Because you think, fuck, I've got to really know what I'm talking about for 2 hours. I can't get away with winging it. So yeah, because
and it's putting you in the room with a handful of people so you can do it firsthand. Like, this is what they're thinking about. This is how they're thinking about it. I mean, it's fantastic market research.
oh man, yeah, you can, this is what comedians say, isn't it? You can see the jokes where everybody switches off and the ones that get them really going, and then you adjust your material. It's exactly the same with that. Yeah. No, there's no better test than a real life audience, is there?
Yeah, I agree.
You need to every so often, right? You need to just go in and hear what they're saying because it changes. And, even if you know your customer really, really well, they're not like a persona that just stays the same for years. All their different fears and frustrations just constantly shifting. And if you're not one step ahead of those, you end up just looking really dated and out of touch. And I've known some, because I work with agencies, specifically agencies. I've met some agencies that have just totally lost touch of their customers, and they just look 20 years out of date. They just look like they're from the 90s, still trying to do 90s marketing. And I'm like, you are in a different era, not even just behind and they're the ones that ring me up and say I'm struggling. And I'm like, well, yeah, you haven't spoken to anybody who's not 70 plus years old. It's the same, it's a step that lots of people miss because they jump straight to, because we do a lot of messaging work. We write a lot of stuff for agencies, how they pitch themselves publicly, how they sell themselves to clients directly. But so much of it is just based on massive assumptions about things, and they haven't always checked it, or they haven't sat in the room. And most often it's because they haven't really narrowed down any kind of target customer. So they're still trying to service everybody from B2C lipstick brands to B2B oil and pharma. And it's like, well, you can't sit in the room with everybody, right? So pick which room you're going to sit in and then really sit in that room for a while, and you will learn what pisses them off, what excites them, what frustrates them. That's, like you said, that's the gold mine, because you lift all of that, put it on a page, and then people are like, wow, it's like you're in my head. We used to get people ring us up and say, I've just read your website. I can't believe, have you been listening to us in our meetings? Because you've written exactly what my co-founder and me have been talking about for the last 6 months. And I'm like, no, people don't. They're, you're in there, you're listening. So you can pick it up wholesale and sell it back to them. And I know that sounds bad, but it's it's mirroring what they do. But so many people don't want to do that work. They just want to, and just see who comes through the door. But then they come to me moaning that it's tire kickers and low ballers and time wasters. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't filter any of them out. You just opened it for the door for anybody. So it's your fault.
It's your fault. People
Yeah.
pretty clearly divide themselves into two groups, right? It's either the ones who absolutely do not want to hear that, and the ones who hear it and are like, "Oh shit, you're right."
That's a really good point. It's a really good point. Yeah. And I think that group of people that I said are, 20 years behind, they're the ones that don't want to hear that. But there's a lot of people, to be fair, in the agency world, the people that I speak to, they want to do the work. They know where they're not good. They're pretty good at reflecting on themselves and saying, shit, this is our blind spot on the whole. But yeah, not everybody, but they're pretty good. Um, yeah, I don't know. What do you find? Are people receptive to that kind of news in your world or?
You know, I think that those two groups exist in every market in every world, and the balance or the ratio between the two differs depending on the barrier to entry into the market. I'm looking forward to hearing your take on this. I think marketing agencies probably follow a similar path to like business coaching. And I've even said this to a few people. Marketing agencies are the new business coaching or business coaches, where there's a pretty low barrier to entry and it's easy for somebody to come in and just say, hey, this is what I do now. And those, they tend to be the ones who don't really want to be accountable for what it actually takes to do the things that they're going to say that they can do.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I'd not thought. You're absolutely right. I mean, the agency market is exactly the same, but there is no barrier to entry in the agency market. You need a laptop. You need a laptop and a website, and you can literally download a WordPress template called Agency 001, and that's it, right? You are in business. Um, and that's what's kind of difficult it's great because it's democratized it, right? So I'm all for people around the world being able to get out of the traditional 9 to 5 working environment.
Yeah,
I think the world's
give them a
changing.
shot.
I'm all for that. Give them a shot, right? If you're great at what you do and you want to do it, then I'm not that person that says you have to do 20 years earning your stripes. But what it does mean is it's saturated at the bottom end of the market by people who will undercut each other, churn and burn clients, no real quality control. But the problem is that clients don't always understand the difference between the very bottom and the kind of mid market. And so they see it all as the same. So there's just a massive agencies, as I'm sure there are like consultants and probably in every industry. There's just so many. It's oversaturation. So then that's kind of why we started was, um, we were working with agencies on their client projects, just write like copywriting, at some cool agencies. And then they were all turning around to us and saying like, can you write our own website? Because we can't do it ourselves for some reason. We just don't seem to be able to do it. But what I realize is there's a massive market because they're just one of thousands of agencies who do exactly the same thing. And they were like, well, it's not really how your copy sounds. You haven't got any reason to be chosen over any of these other agencies. That's why you can't get the copy signed off or nobody likes the copy. Not because it doesn't sound cool. It just doesn't say anything. That's the problem. You're just saying the same shit as everybody else, but just in a different order. That's not going to sell the business. It's not going to make any difference. It's just surface level polish. So then they started saying to me, well, can you sort our agency out? We'll just sound like everybody else. And that's when I was like, there's a market here. This industry needs somebody to come in and say, let's find what makes you interesting first, and then let's write the copy, where they're just jumping straight to the copy going, let's pick an adjective with this, with that. And I'm like, no. You need to find what to say and then how to say it comes later.
I'm a note taker, so I'm writing things down as you go, and you have no reason to be chosen. Talk about hitting between the eyes. That hits right there.
I mean, that's the brutal truth. That's the brutal truth. Most agencies do exactly the same stuff, right? That's the reality of it. Let's be honest. If you're a design agency, you design stuff. marketing agency, you market stuff, advertise. It's all the same service. So then it comes down to a load of different factors, right? And it's either who's doing the work, how you're doing the work, the results of the work. There's only a handful of different dials you can turn to give yourself an edge, but there is always something in there. And that's the puzzle that I love. I love that bit, right? What is it? What can we find? And I would love to hand on heart tell you that it's always 100% unique, and I definitely push for that every single time. But sometimes it's just a 10% tip towards the balance in their favor. That's enough for them to add another zero to their revenue. They just need just a little bit of something. Otherwise, clients must just go into those pitches and just, by the end of the day, must just be like, okay, they all basically said exactly the same thing. They just had different colors and logos.
You somehow managed, in trying to stand out, you somehow managed to blend in. And that's the opposite of the goal. So how do you do it? Because you do it and you do it well. Like everybody who hears what you're saying is going to be like, yeah, that's great. Me too. Me too. But they don't produce it the way you do. Like yours is good.
It's hard, right? I have to, well, I'm honest with people up front, right? So when we work together, I ask them, what's your appetite for risk and reward here, right? Because if you want the big rewards, you have to take the big risks. If you just want to slightly evolve what you say, I can do that, but you have to you can't expect it to add a zero to your revenue because it doesn't, right? If I'm just rehashing what's on your website, it's going to say the same thing. You'll attract the same people with the same shitty offers, that lowest budgets, highest expectation people. It's always the way. But if you're willing to go on the journey, then we could really push you to somewhere new, and it will be scary and it is risky, but it could mean that that's the big reward. So I always set that expectation with people first. Then in terms of the actual process itself, the first thing I do is just go around and listen, basically just speak to people in the business, outside the business, research the business, just soak it all in. And there's always little seeds of ideas that people have got, and they come from the maddest places. They're not always from the CEO or the boardroom. They come from the guy that's delivering and paid ads, right? It's sat at his desk every day, or just those little seeds of ideas. But then basically we lock ourselves, or I lock everybody in a room and I sit them down and we thrash this stuff out. And it's part of its process, part of it's rigorous. And I would love to tell you it was all like some huge, amazing framework or system I had. But honestly, some of it's just pure coincidence, chaos, creativity, intuition. There's a part of it that's just uncontrollable. It just comes from seeing something. And then what happens is I'll just be a pain in their ass and just say, like, I will just push and challenge them and say, well, they don't want to specialize in something. And I'll ask them why not? And I'll push into that and I'll challenge them. And quite often they've got massive misconceptions that if they specialize, they'll be bored, or there isn't a big enough market, and I just have to kind of keep challenging them and saying, is that true? There isn't actually any data to say that's true. That's just your limiting beliefs. And so we thrash this stuff out basically, and it's part strategy, part therapy. And we sit there and they go on a bit of a journey and we find some interesting angles. And eventually you get to that point, and like you said at the beginning, testing your material, you'll see that moment when the eyes just open and they go, that little breakthrough moment happens when they go, ooh. And that's when you know we're starting to get somewhere. And then I basically don't let go of that, and I don't let them get distracted by all the other possibilities. I hold on to that and say, no. Stop looking at that. Yes, you could be that, but you're not going to be that. Let's just stick to this one thing. And that one, it's that thing of tennis balls, right? You throw 10 tennis balls at a prospect, they're catching none. If we can just get that one tennis ball to throw at them, they will catch that, understand it, and come and talk to you. And then you can slowly throw the other nine at them. But everybody just needs to throw all 10 tennis balls straight away. And that's the problem. So yeah, I'm like yeah, like a dog with a bone for the first bit of just stick to something, one thing.
Well, what I hear when I hear you talking about that is I hear a craftsman talking about his craft. You know what the outcome is that you're going to produce, and you know how you're going to get there, what it takes to get there, and you're going to cling to that, and you're not going to let someone who's not the craftsman steer you away from it. You're doing your job. Like, that's why you're good at it. I don't know how many conversations I've had with marketers. The conversation always starts the same way. It's like, do you know who your ideal client is? Yeah, sure. Okay. Then let's talk about who that is. And then we have this conversation, and they're like, okay, well, we'll get to work. And so then I'm like, well, wait a second. What if I'm wrong? What if some of the stuff that I just told you about them is wrong? What if that's not a good description? Or what if the way that I've positioned this is not right? What if the offer's not right? Like, uh, they're taking everything at face value and not doing any type of validation. They're not thinking for themselves, right? And when you reach out to somebody, an expert like Treacle, Roland, or a marketer, you're trying to get help on these things. You're not looking for somebody to come in and be compliant. Like, I want some collaboration at least. I don't want them to think that they're just going to walk in and get the answers handed to them. If that's what they need, they're not qualified.
Too many leaders are afraid of friction, right? Friction is where the heat, the energy sparks from. But agency leaders especially, they're all, not all, quite often really nice people, creative people, empathetic people. So we all, and me included, we sometimes shy away from that friction, but that friction is needed because that's where the decisions get made, the big decisions, the important decisions, the yes, no. And so people always they want to be people pleasing. They want to have lots of people in the room. They want to have democratic decision making processes. But I'm like, sometimes you need to have an argument or a debate, not an argument, a debate. And that's healthy because that's when the air gets cleared and people make decisions, not just on emotion, but with rationale as well. But if everybody just agrees with everybody, we have design by committee and your positioning and your messaging will just sound like a mess of everyone's ideas. Somebody needs to take control and just not be afraid to piss a few people off. Like, that's part of the process of leadership. You don't want to be a dictator. You can do it in a good way, but yeah, I think friction's good. And I think, like you said, even in the writing that we do, I embrace friction. I want to piss people off. It should piss somebody off. It's not pissing somebody off. It's not turning somebody off. It's just nothing. It's just noise. Right? I'd rather you hate it than ignore it. I'd rather you disagree than just kind of scroll past it. And I think that's where people go wrong. They just kind of want to please everybody. But don't please everybody. That's the wrong way. Piss some people off, turn some people off.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is you don't want people to leave your writing feeling lukewarm. Either get hot or get cold.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Yeah, lukewarm. The middle ground is where great agencies and great positioning and great messaging go to die. Right? Just put a stake in the ground, stand for something, and back it. But don't try and please everybody and keep everybody happy, because it's like ends up meaningless.
Yeah, well, trying to please everybody and speak to everybody is going to create the equivalent of the shitty AI content that's everywhere to be found right now, right? I mean, AI by design is going to create the average of all the shit that it's been fed. So it cannot do anything unique. It can't give you something like a unique perspective because it hasn't gotten that. And that's the same thing as like trying to speak to everybody.
Yeah, it's at the minute, and I'm aware that it's going to change and it will get really good, I'm sure. But right now, it's a plagiarism engine. It's just scraping other people's ideas and sort of mashing them together. Which is why when you get people with an opinion or a perspective or a stake in the ground or like a sharp focus, it really cuts through because like you said, AI isn't going to do that. It's not going to tell you what to think. It's just going to rehash how to say it. But people want, the whole world is going to crave humanity again, right? There's going to be a swing back away from, this is my totally, unsubstantiated opinion. I've got nothing to back this up. This is just my feel. But we're going to live in a world of robotics and AI, and all of this is inevitable. So people are going to crave that weird maverick humanity, just, like self-deprecation, opinion, friction, arguments, all of these things that are just innately human will really resonate again, because people don't want homogenous robotic thinking. They want all the weird fringes of what real people are like. And so I think in marketing and business, that's going to swing back to that. People are going to want that craziness, stupid ideas, late night drunken bits of writing. All of that stuff's going to be the edge, because everyone else can get the homogenous B2B writing by pressing the button. So it's like, well, just throw it on the pile. But yeah, if we're going to need weirdness again. Yeah. I feel like there's, a lot of the writing that I do, people like it because there's a thing called the pratfall effect, right? It's that, like, the minute that you let your guard down or you fuck up in some way, people like that, right? They warm to that because suddenly you're more human and you're more approachable. AI is like infallible. It's too clean. It's too polished, right? People are going to warm to things that are fucked up, mistakes, stuff you get wrong. All of that stuff is just, people are going to like that. And I tap into that quite a lot of, like, I'm just a guy. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm making it all up. I'm just winging it, right? I feel like, yeah, that resonates with some people, maybe not others, but that's okay. But,
Well, I've said a lot about how differently your writing sounds to me. Uh, and I mentioned the article, the first article of yours that I read, it was something like, why your agency's value prop is pretty bad, or something like that, and right from the very beginning, it definitely hits different. Tell us about, like, what's going through your head as you're coming up with and writing content like that. How do you think about that so differently, so you can produce something so different?
well, I think, I spent a long time looking at agency websites, like a weird amount of time. I had a different job and I had to contact loads of agencies and look at their websites. So I was looking at like thousands of agencies. Um, Half the time I was just like, I don't even understand what this agency does. Like, I don't even understand what kind of agency it is, let alone, it's not selling me anything. It's not even telling me anything. It's literally just a soup full of words that I don't understand. And I'm like a relatively smart guy who can read. So I was like, how are these guys winning brands, right? This is nuts. So when I first started Treacle, yeah, we used to write these opinion pieces, and so value propositions. So we were looking at, like, when I go on your website, the agency's website, what does it say? Like, what's the reason for me to want to work with you as an agency? And we used to, some of it was just so bad. It was like either really meaningless statements like, we deliver results. And I was like, well, that doesn't mean anything. Like, show me who out there is not delivering results. Results could be anything. They're not even good results. You just don't know. Like, you're just telling me you do something. Then you get really abstract ones like, we create the future. And I'd be like, what? Like, what does that mean? Like, how can you create the future? Like, it was all just, and yeah, I couldn't get my head around it. And they were always, we do this, we do that. Or just, we are a marketing agency. The amount of marketing agencies websites, I open it up and it says, hello, we are a marketing agency. And I'm like, but I know that, right? I've clicked on the site. I know you're a marketing agency. Or even the worst ones they're called, I don't know, like Green Donkey Marketing. And then you click the website and it opens up and it's like, hello, we are Green Donkey Marketing. I'm like, Yeah, no, I've just clicked on it. Can see your logo. So they just used to waste all this real estate on their website where they could be saying something valuable, like, this is why you should choose us. This is what we'll do for you. So yeah, I used to write these opinion pieces. I just ranting, because people in agencies are really cool, right? They're great people. I love them. They're like creative people, strategic people, commercial people. It's a really good balance. I love the people. They're a good balance of all of those things, right? Which is why I work in this world. I want them to win. I want those people to win. They're just balanced people. They've got a bit of all of it. I just couldn't believe how bad they were at talking about themselves. And it used to really wind me up that really creative, smart people couldn't sell themselves or do it. So we'd write these opinion pieces and try and, well, yeah, first I'll call out how bad it was, but then try and give some some practical advice on stuff they can do. And I can't even really remember the post massively, but it was just basic stuff, find a benefit and sell that. What's the main benefit you can sell to your prospects? Yes, you need to say what kind of agency you are, but that can be in the subheader. Talk about the value you're going to bring, but don't make it too universal and don't make it too specific. The magic's in the middle, right? There's something in that middle ground is where you want to aim. We used to write these quite specific posts on how to do stuff, and agencies loved it. They were like, it was not just calling them out and telling them their shit, but trying to at least offer some kind of help as well. I don't want everybody to think I'm just a negative guy that goes around hating on agencies. I do try and help them as well.
So I want you to take us through your process. So it's basically, I heard you explain it like, first is, here's how we do this. First thing is we figure out who do you want to work with? Then what's the category that you're in? Then what's the specific problems that you solve? Then do you have a robust and unique solution? Then what value does that create in the eyes of your customer? Then is your agency credible? And is your competition doing it? And can we make sure that they can't solve it as well as you? Then we've got something that we can go out there and put in front of people in a way that's going to compel them. How did I do?
It's at the heart of the process, yeah. So we have this canvas. It's a one page, and it's everything you just said, right? And it's deceptively simple because it's literally just 8 boxes, and so you would look at that and go, well, that can't be worth this kind of money or this kind of time or this hiring this nerdy British guy to do this, right? But it's really hard to fill that in without putting loads of answers in every box. So that it's the discipline of being able to put one answer per box is the key bit, because anybody can fill it in, and people can download this for free. I'll send you the link. It's like a free quiz. You can download it. It's got a guide. Everything's with it, but the value isn't in the canvas itself, right? The canvas is easy to fill in. Anybody can do it. Deciding what word you should put in each box is the value of that. And that's hard, because to do that properly, you need to turn down opportunities. And as a business owner, and to everybody listening who's a business owner and leader, nobody wants to turn down opportunities. It's uncomfortable to say no to revenue, to opportunities, to leads, to all of that stuff. But ultimately, every strategy is a trade-off, right? It's what you're willing to say no to in order to say yes to. And so it's really hard to put just 8 words in a box, because that takes real discipline. It means staying single-minded and turning away, sometimes millions of dollars worth of revenue potentially in order to make more money by focusing in some area, right? That's thinking behind that canvas. And that's basically the work we do with them. So it always sits at the heart of the process. It's always there. It's the thing we always fill in. Like I said at the beginning, that's the rigor part to a certain extent. There is just craziness, ideas, napkin ideas. That should be part of that process. We need to explore each of those boxes. That's fine. But they need to make some decisions. That's the key. And so once they filled the canvas out, it does always get filled out. What we do then is we score it right? So there's 5 things we score it against to work out, is this a good positioning? So we might have 2 or 3 of these canvases, each of them a viable strategy that could scale that agency or that business. So what we'll do is we'll look at the canvas and go, well, first, have we filled it in right? Yes, that looks good. Let's score it. So we score it against 5 things. How distinctive it is. So is it unique in the market? Like, does it set us apart from the people in our competitive landscape? Is it desirable? So do clients actually want this? Is there a market for this? Or are we selling something that nobody's going to buy, but we've fallen in love with? Then is it defensible, right? Can we actually live up to this? Can we prove it? Can we back it up? Or is it all just hype and hot air? So those are the first 3. And we have a registered model for that, the 3D positioning. So you score it against those 3Ds. But then there's 2 others that, there's 2 others that you need to factor in. So there's 2 Cs. Culturally, if we go with this positioning, is it going to work internally? Can we recruit the right people? Will people buy into it? Will the team get behind it? Will it align up? And then almost the most importantly, commercially, is this going to grow the business, right? If we choose this strategy, this positioning, is it going to make us money? Are we going to be rich? Is it going to do all the stuff that we've said? So if we can score those 5 things to a decent level, we've got a winner, right? We think we've got a winner, but ultimately there's only ever one test for positioning, and that's taking it to market. So we can do the research, we can try and validate it, we can do all of this stuff, and I'm all for all of it. I'm not against it, but people will vote with their wallet, right? That's ultimately whether the strategy is what the strategy up until that point is like an informed guess. Let's be honest, right? And it's a risk, but we're just trying to mitigate that risk by scoring it. And then we take the best one to market, and we can soft launch it. We can do a landing page. We can trial it. There's loads of things we can do to mitigate the risk, but ultimately, prospects will tell you whether it's shit or not.
Yeah. So how much leash do you give to something when you roll it out to test like that?
It varies. It varies on the client. So the distinctive one is easy to verify, right? We can do the research. Is it differentiated? Is it not? That's relatively simple desk research we can kind of go about. Desirable is the hard one, right? Because ultimately you can speak to your current clients, you can speak to focus groups, you can speak, but it's never really tested in the market because they're not having to spend 50 grand with that agency. So they're not really full test. So that one's always the hardest. Defensible is fine. You can tell if you've got case studies where you need to build that out. Cultural, that's mostly intuition. Honestly, it's down to like the people in the business thinking, will our team get this? Will they be behind this? And the commercial one, that's a mixture nowadays of, market research. How big is that market? How viable? What's the total addressable market for this? What realistically do we need to win in terms of leads conversion to generate the kind of revenue we can do? So there's just some calculations we can do. So most of them are doable. It's the desirable one that's always the unknown. Like, do people really want this? And we've done things in the past, like some preference testing. So we've run a few different positionings by people, focus groups. The big one we've been doing at the minute is like, let's run a landing page, right? I'll write a landing page with your new positioning, your new messaging, and we'll run some paid traffic to it, and we'll see, if people are buying, then it looks like we're onto a winner. Maybe like a low friction call to action, maybe like an easy way in, and we'll make a call on what we think is a success. And if it looks successful, then we'll start to roll it out to the main agency website. We'll start to evolve their positioning out. So there's different plays, but ultimately kind of got to jump in at some point, right? I've seen agencies spend loads of money on really nice looking decks and documents and stuff. And I'm like, it all looks great on paper, but like, we don't know if it sells. So let's ship it.
So just base this off of what you do know and what you have seen. And I hope this isn't unfair putting you on the spot too much, but so what advice do you have for me? Like, what are the things that I'm doing where I'm making the same mistakes that the people that we're talking about are making? Where am I missing an opportunity where I could sound different?
So it's good. And I think you should challenge me. I'm telling everybody that they need friction and then I can't duck the friction, right? So let's roll with it. I'm all for it. So let me, this like a mini session. Let's think of this as like a mini strategy session, right? So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions if that's all right. And
Yeah.
then that will spark the conversation from there. So who's your, like, who's your ideal client? Who do you want to be working with?
Yeah, so it's business owners who are they could be just about anywhere in their journey, but they're trying to grow, trying to advance, trying to level up. They could be under 1 million in annual revenue, but more likely, 1 to 3, 1 to 5 million. So they're kind of beyond the proof of concept, but they're trying to figure out what are the stages, what are the levels that they're going to need to go through. What's the next thing I need to do to get this to click for me to level up? And they're going to be self improvement type people. They're probably using something like EOS, Entrepreneurs Operating System, or some other type of strategic planning, and they're self implementing. They read the books. They're members of mastermind groups or peer groups, listen to podcasts. They're looking for that next thing to click so they can level up. They're looking for that next idea, the next aha moment.
I mean, that's a good answer. I don't normally get good answers. So that's, I mean, that's, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got a good understanding, not just of them as a demographic, right? You know them, you called out the demographic stuff, right? And then some firmographic stuff, where their business is, but you've got psychographic stuff in there, right? You understand them, you understand what they're thinking and believing and how they're behaving. And that's key, right? I think that's key because that's not a level that lots of people understand about their target clients. They know who they are, where they are, what their income is, what their business looks like. But it's like, well, what's pissing them off? What's keeping them up at night? What's frustrating them? And you've got that really nicely, actually, that thing of like, what's that nugget that's going to unlock the next thing for them,
Yeah.
that next step for them. Yeah. I mean, I think what you've done really well, even in that first answer, is start to hone in on what we have as number 3 and 4 on our canvas, which is what is their problem, right? And that's not just like, I want to make more money but what is their sort of what's their immediate, most important, most impactful kind of problem that they have? And what's your solution? So I think the podcast is such a great idea in as much as it solves a specific problem for them. Of like unlocking that kind of next thing, giving them that little insight they hadn't thought about. So I suppose that's the thing. And I mean, you are on that line of thought that like, it's those little left field moments of clarity that somebody else has had that you can steal or borrow or use to fast track. And so there's almost a kind of thing there of like saving yourself years of learning the hard way. That's the kind of selling point here of like, you don't have to make the mistakes yourself. It's a misconception that you need to earn your own battle scars. Like borrow our battle scars. It's like that kind of, you can cut through that if you're willing to heed the advice that these business owners give you, but you can save yourself, you can bring down the time scale. That's how I would see it. It's like a time scale place. Save yourself the time and hassle by not repeating these mistakes. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's something about mistakes that I like. That's where the learning is, isn't it? That's what we're really chatting about as much today is, it's people's mistakes, and it's the quicker you listen to the mistakes, the quicker you can learn from those. So I think you're on the right lines with all of it. I think you're really close. Yeah. I think it's then it becomes more like, well, how can you spin it, describe it, tell it, sell it? And I think, you've got all the foundations. Then it's just, what's the hook in for people? It's like, yeah, don't bother wasting your time making the mistakes. Listen to them,
Mm-hmm.
learn from them, get there faster. That's the kind of, that's where I'd go in a very mini direction. That's where I would take it if we were redoing the
Yeah.
messaging. But I don't think strategically you've got everything you need.
Okay. That's awesome. So like, where do you, so when it comes time to spin it, where do you go for inspiration for that?
I mean, in that strategy phase, definitely that's it, right? I'm not opening the door till someone makes a decision. That's effectively the kind of idea. Once they've made a decision, it's back with us, basically, with me, and I will I will write 100 versions of one line, and 99 will hit the cutting room floor because they just don't quite have it. But it's that process it always starts by just saying what we need to say. Nuts and bolts, nothing fancy, right? So just say it in the clearest way. Like, would my 8-year-old son kind of understand what we're trying to say here a little bit? So I try and start like that as a thought exercise. Let's say our strategy in the most basic way we can. Then I start to write more creatively of like, well, look, what are different ways that we could talk about this? How do I structure this? What's the most important point they need to know up front? And what's the flow of information people need to have after that? So then it's a kind of organizational thing. Let's take this boring bit of writing that just says what our strategy is, who we are, how we're different, why you need us. And now let's organize it. So that's the second part, organizing it into an order. The third part is what's the best way to say that, right? And sometimes it is just clear and simple. That's fine. Sometimes in the agency world, because they're dealing with brands and CMOs and brand people, it's like, well, we need to say it, but we need to say it with some style as well. So then that's the bit I get excited about. Like, can we say something that's strategically sound, that's clear, but also has just a little touch of style in there as well? For me, that's the golden trifecta, right? Strategy, simplicity, style. You get those three things working together. That's that wow moment when people go on a website and they're like, fuck, that's good. Wow. That's like, I get it. It's cool. I want it. You get people thinking that you're onto a winner. So yeah, we'll write 100 versions, hate 99, eventually get one. Rewrite that probably another 100 times. It's a lot of, it's write drunk, edit sober. It's all of those cliches stuff about how to do it. But then you get it. And when you get it, it's like a puzzle. It's like the last piece of the puzzle. And I love it. And then you're like, yes, it all unlocks from there. And the rest is just telling that story in different ways, basically. There's the core story is there. Yeah. Then it's the marketing just repeats it. The sales gives the detail around it. The website tells it and sells it. It's just the same story over and over. And that's good. You need to repeat. People try and say too many things. You go on my LinkedIn, I just say the same thing, but in 100 different ways. That's all it is. Your agency sounds too similar. It needs to stand out. I just find different ways to say it, but it's the same message over and over and over. And that's what people need to be okay with that. Make peace with the fact if you want your message to land, you have to repeat it over and over and over. That's okay.
How much of this is going to be included in your masterclass?
I mean, good question. The masterclass is going to be a tour through the canvas, effectively. So it's going to start by, just as we've done, looking at the problems, what's going on in the agency world, why you need to find a USP, right? That's, I'm going to just remind everybody why having a USP is all about, giving you a reason to be chosen, tipping the balance in your favor, not leaving winning clients down to speed or price or luck. It's a way to control your destiny. So we talk about that stuff, but then I'm going to go deep into relatively deep into the mechanics of each of those 8 boxes. How do you find your target client? Why do you need to know your service category? What is a problem and solution? Why should anybody care about that? So I'm going to go through those 8 boxes in this workshop, and people can kind of basically play along at home, or in the room and start filling those boxes in. And the aim is I've got 2 hours, which is high pressure. 2 hours to try and get everybody to fill in that canvas. And at the end of it, there's like a short statement where you plug in your answers from the boxes. And it's like, it's an onlyness statement. This is how we're the only agency that does this thing for these people, so they can do this thing. It's basically just a kind of boring functional statement at that point. But if you've done it right, that functional, boring onlyness statement is worth, 6-7 figures potentially, because it's the reason that you should be chosen over your competitors. So that's what I'm going to try and do. Some will do it, some won't. It will, there'll be tears, there'll be laughter, there'll be blood, but it's going to be we're just going to rip into it and, not hold back, and people can ask questions, I'm sure. And there'll be exercises and I'll wing it probably mostly. That will be I'm just going to go with it and see how it goes.
You have a book.
It's, I decided I was going to write a book in about a month, and I wrote it, and then I don't think it's very good. But so what I did instead was, it's like 30 or 40,000 words. It's just a Google Doc. I'm not even going to bother printing it. It's kind of everything that's ever been in my brain about agency positioning and messaging. If people want it, they can email me. Just go on the website and just email me and I'll send it to them. They can just have access to it. I also sent it out to our mailing list and said to people that they could just jump into the Google Doc and totally rip it to shreds, tell me what they thought of it. And nobody did. Nobody did. And I don't know if people are too scared to call me out on stuff, but it's there. Everybody can have that. It's, if they want to. I'd like to write a proper book. I think it will be more of like a bit more my tone and style. I think this one is more like a how-to guide. It's quite practical. It's quite exercises and things, which is great. But I want one that's a bit more like, I don't know, a bit more vibey. So I'm gonna go back and write another one.
So what's the title of the first book?
The first book is called Why You, like a guide to nailing your agency's unique proposition, something like that. I can't even remember. I mean, I don't even mind if you want to share the Google Doc link. We can put it in there. I don't mind if people just want it. I don't need anybody's email address. They can just go in there and see if any of it's useful, and if not, they can just ignore it.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found the show valuable, you can say thanks and show your support simply by taking a quick second to like, share, and comment on the show. You can also find more information about each of my guests, all of the resources from the show, and myself at nickberry.info/TBOJ.